Welcome to Go a Little Mad, a horror movie podcast. My name is Jason, and I love scary movies.
I'm Brianna, and I don't. And this week we're discussing The Shining.
Because despite me saying I'm giving out too many high scores lately, we're just going to keep watching great movies.
This was a big one, probably one that we should have waited to do, but it's okay. Here we are.
Yeah, as we were watching this and researching it, and I'll start by saying this is definitely the most work I've put into an episode. I kept thinking this should have been saved for episode 100 or something special, but yeah. It's a great movie, and honestly, it's not like we could say anything new about it.
Right. Facts. So. Yeah, so some introductory thoughts I thought we would throw out here. First, I think it holds up for me more than The Exorcist or Psycho as far as older movies goes.
That's interesting because am I correct to say that The Exorcist scared you more than this?
Well, I think as a film, I guess maybe not specifically as horror, as a film, it holds up. I think The Exorcist is corny in many ways, and I wouldn't want to watch it again.
Yeah.
Now, I don't want to watch this one again. I'm not going to be one of those repeated watchers who obsesses over every little thing and wondering why Kubrick did this, that, and the other.
Hello.
But it is a good movie.
To kind of get out ahead of something we'll talk about a little later, I also feel like this movie, had you gone into it without just kind of absorbing so many moments of this movie by osmosis, it could have been scary. But we're at this point in society where all of the standout moments that would have really made you feel on edge or uncomfortable 20 years ago or 30, 40 years ago, to anybody who hasn't seen it now, those moments are they're memed to death. They're part of the zeitgeist.
Yeah, so. There's one scene that doesn't get memed for multiple reasons, I would think. The naked one, the bathtub one.
Ugh.
So that was the only kind of disturbing scene that I wasn't expecting. I expected the twins to be in it more because they are all over pop culture. And I was fascinated to learn or excited to learn more about it. And overall, I got a lot of American Horror Story hotel vibes throughout.
You mean the thing that came out 35 years after this?
Well, yeah. Obviously inspired by. Yeah.
I'm just saying, you should get Shining vibes from American Horror Story Hotel.
Yeah, but my reference first is American Horror Story.
I'm just teasing. I have that written in my notes because at some point while we were watching the movie, you said, I'm getting big AHS hotel vibes from this.
Yeah.
And I was just the audacity of this woman.
I also knew it was Stanley Kubrick. Something about it made me ask you. I think it was during when we were watching it. I was like, is this a Stanley Kubrick movie, right? Or maybe,
I believe we talked about that a little bit.
Maybe just before, but I don't know why I knew that. There's no reason for me to know that. And I've also never seen any other Stanley Kubrick film and also probably don't care to.
That's not true. You made me watch Eyes Wide Shut on our first date.
That's not true at all. Okay, so let's talk about the credits. It was written by, well, actually, it's complicated, I feel like. So it's based on a Stephen King novel, obviously, who did apparently write a screenplay for this, but Kubrick didn't even want to look at it. And instead, he and another author slash novelist slash screenwriter, Diane Johnson, wrote the screenplay for it, which is weird.
Yeah, I'm sure we talked about this a little bit over dinner, so I'm sure you have more to say about this, but this definitely is an instance where the book and the film are really just kind of two separate entities.
Yeah.
Kubrick kind of took the source material and did his own thing with it, added his own messages, completely changed the ending. So he drew a lot of inspiration from the book. You know, that's kind of an understatement, obviously, but I believe even Stephen King wasn't like super in love with how the film turned out, right?
Yeah, I was going to talk about it at the end, but yeah, he's not a lover of it.
Sorry, spoiler alert.
No, it's okay. It was directed by Stanley Kubrick, and it stars Jack Nicholson as Jack Torrance, Shelley Duvall as Wendy Torrance, Danny Lloyd as Danny Torrance, and Scatman Crothers as Dick Halloran.
R.I.P.
Yeah.
Do you think that Kubrick purposefully tried to find a Danny for Danny?
I know, right? So weird. No, though, because there's a reason why Danny Lloyd got the role, and I'll share that later.
Can't wait.
Okay, a summary. A struggling writer, Jack, takes on the job as the winter caretaker for the Overlook Hotel, which has a storied past. Jack brings along his wife and young, troubled son, hoping it'll be a great opportunity to write and fun for the family. But instead, the hotel pulls Jack in and pushes him to murderous madness.
So where did you get that synopsis from?
My brain.
Your brain. Okay, well, no, I find it funny that you called Danny troubled, but not Jack.
Oh, well, yeah, I mean, I feel like it clearly comes across that Jack is troubled eventually, but
That's fair.
it's like, what's up with Danny? I think there's more to it than just that he shines. It's, I don't know. We'll get there.
Can't wait to hear your thoughts on it.
What is the Rotten Tomato score for this? Like 100?
No, actually. Only 85% critically, which is lower than Barry Lyndon, which, if you don't know what that is, I'll get to that in a few minutes. But I just found that really funny, that this was a lower critical score than Barry Lyndon.
Mm-hmm.
85% critic, 93% audience.
Oh, okay.
I don't really know why that critic score is comparatively low, because most of the things I read about this were kind of glowing. But I do know there were, people who were fans of the book that took issue with Kubrick's adaptation.
Yeah.
And that probably led to some lower reviews.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Well, our touch points for this, I mean, for me, it's everything and nothing, because I've never seen the film, but I've seen so many references to it. So I know, like, you know what, though? I actually will say I didn't think it took place at a hotel. I thought it was this crazy guy chasing random people around. I didn't know it was his family or anything like that.
Because all you really knew was the axe thing, right?
Yeah, and the face coming through the door, which I assumed was an outside door, not just into a bathroom and stuff like that. So some parts, I guess, like that were the overall plot was surprising to me, but everything else in it wasn't.
Okay. So, unlike most classic horror movies, regular listeners will recall that most of my horror exposure to classic movies was from my uncle, who had a bunch of VHS tapes. We watched them all the time. This wasn't one of those. I had never even heard of this until I was maybe 11, 12, 13.
Oh, wow. So grown up.
Well, for me, that's a lot later. I mean, to put it in perspective, by the time I was 13, we'd already had 2 Scream movies. So,
wow.
But anyway, a friend of mine, his older brother, was talking about it in kind of like that taunting way that all your friends' older brothers did. And I don't know, maybe that's a boy thing, but they were like, that movie's too scary. It's not for kids. You can't watch that movie. It's too scary for you. It'll give you nightmares. So obviously I sought it out. We rented it from Blockbuster, and I loved it.
Did it give you nightmares?
I don't think so. I mean, not in a way that other scary movies didn't. You know what I mean? Not in any particularly traumatic way, but definitely the girls creep me out. As a kid, that's just no thank you.
Yeah.
And since that first viewing, I mean, I've seen it 6, 7, 8 times. I don't know, this is one I've seen a bunch. I love this movie. I'm not quite one of those people that watches it and dissects it frame by frame, but I get it. I get why people would.
Yeah. It's really long though. Oh my God.
Normally don't get a lot of complaints about that.
We did it out of order again, but what are your flesh wounds for the movie?
Yeah, so, like I said earlier, we can't say anything about this movie that hasn't already been said. So I apologize in advance if I'm giving you old information or stuff that you've just read or heard a million times by now. That's the general you. I know you won't have heard a lot of this, but...
Well, I mean, who spends time researching movies instead of just watching them? Maybe we're teaching everyone everything about this.
Okay, fair enough. For starters, the easy one, the Overlook is based on a real hotel. It's called the Stanley Hotel in Estes Park, Colorado. It was opened by and shares a name with the founder or co-founder of Stanley Steamer, Freeland Oscar Stanley. Do you know what Stanley Steamer is?
Is that a vacuum?
No, but I totally get why you would think that. They were steam-powered cars in the early 1900s. Like, they were after the Model T, so they were, they weren't like this weird, like, 1800s thing. But Stanley Steamer, they were steam-powered cars in, like, the 1920s.
Okay, it's definitely a vacuum, but okay, got it.
Yeah, so Stanley Steamer co-founder Freeland Oscar Stanley opened it in 1909. Stephen King spent a night there. While he was staying there, he was working on another novel, which I didn't record the name of, but it was about like a haunted amusement park. And he was just like, he didn't like it. He was like, this book isn't going anywhere. But his stay at the Stanley inspired The Shining. He's talked about the subject a lot, several interviews over the last, 50 years. And all of the facts don't quite match up, but like the bones of the story do. So it's just like that general thing where like memories get fuzzy after 50 years. I don't think he's like making anything up. But that said, kind of take some of this with a grain of salt. Mm-hmm. It is said that him and his wife checked in as all the other guests were checking out for the season. They were the only two people in the hotel during their stay. There was one report that Stephen King saw the ghost of a child calling out to their nanny on the 4th floor.
Leaving. Bye.
Him and his wife had dinner in this grand ballroom with like canned orchestral music playing, but like since the hotel was empty, all the other chairs were up on the tables, and it was just their 2 chairs in like this big grand empty ballroom. And he had these weird nightmares about like a fire hose coming to life and attacking him.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so that inspired The Shining. As for the hotel itself, again, these aren't really reliable stories, so take them as you will. But aside from being a sweet place to stay in the Rockies, it doubled as a health resort for people suffering from tuberculosis. Freeland Stanley himself had tuberculosis, and spending time in the fresh air in the Rockies helped his recovery, as the high altitude helped slow the spread of the disease throughout his lungs. He went to Colorado. On the advice of his doctor, he fell in love with it, and he built the Stanley. Just a little fun fact about how good high altitude can be. He was diagnosed in 1903, and it was a pretty bad outlook. Some accounts say he was given only 6 months to live. He ended up living another 37 years, and he died at the age of 91 of natural causes right nearby in Newton, Massachusetts.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, good for him.
Cool.
So anyway, the Stanley, when it first opened, and for a while, doubled as kind of a health resort for people suffering from tuberculosis.
But wait, how does tuberculosis spread? Like, can you just be chilling by the pool and there's also someone near with tuberculosis?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I think it's spread like a cold, I'm not sure. I'm not a virologist or anything.
I feel like you should be more contained, more separated.
Maybe, but I don't know. I didn't look into to see how they like quarantined it or anything. My overall point is people were going there with tuberculosis to get better, and it stands to reason not all of them got better, right? Inevitably, some of those people are going to die. So that's you start right there. You got some sick patients dying in your hotel.
I see. Mm-hmm.
According to UncoverColorado.com, Room 401 is a room frequently cited as haunted. Women have claimed that they were inappropriately touched by an unknown presence while standing in the room's closet.
Ew.
One man claims he witnessed his wedding ring inexplicably move from the bathroom counter and fall down the drain of the sink in the bathroom.
Oh my God.
I don't know about that, though. Doesn't that kind of sound like a drunk guy took off his wedding ring to, like, score at a hotel and then dropped it down the sink when he tried to put it back on?
It is convenient.
Yeah. What do I know, though? Another website, legendsofamerica.com, cites room 418 as a room particularly haunted by ghost children. Mm-hmm. Quote, cleaning crews report having heard many strange noises from the room, as well as seeing impressions on the bed when the room has been empty.
Oh my God.
When guests stay in the room, they often report they hear children playing in the hallway at night. One couple reportedly checked out of the hotel very early in the morning, complaining that the children in the hallway kept them up all night. Mm-hmm. However, there were no children booked in the hotel at the time.
Okay. That's a story that I swear to God, every haunted hotel says that they have that experience.
Yeah, well, it's because people just check in and they don't list their stupid little kid. I mean, they don't even have to be staying on that floor to be playing in that hallway. Like, if you have ever been inside an Applebee's, you've seen a kid just running full speed around that dining room completely unsupervised. That story doesn't hold much water for me.
Yeah.
There are also reports that Freeland Stanley himself and his wife Flora haunt the hotel. Yep. Freeland is said to just pop up around the lobby, the bar, and the billiards room all the time, which, like, I mean, if I were haunting a hotel, those are probably the spots I'd frequent too.
For sure.
Flora is said to frequently play the piano. If you approach the room that the piano is in, you can see the keys, like, physically moving as the music plays. But then if you cross the threshold into the room, it just stops. No more music, no more keys moving, nothing.
That's nice.
But personally, I'm just going to go ahead and lean towards not haunted here. I feel like all of these stories are just very generic hauntings. They're all like second, third-hand accounts. And it seems like exactly the kind of stories that an old hotel would tell people to drum up interest. You know, I don't think it's like a malicious lie or anything. I just think that I don't buy it, is what I'm saying. Don't get me wrong. I'm not dying to spend the night there or anything. But there are so much more better documented hauntings. And this is just like a collection of loose stories. It doesn't really do much for me.
I guess, but I believe it.
I know you do. So then onto the movie itself. One fun thing, and this is a really fun sentence to say, is that the movie started as a Napoleon biopic starring Jack Nicholson. Now, that's not entirely accurate, but it sounds good, right? So Stanley Kubrick, before starting on The Shining, really wanted to do a Napoleon biopic starring Jack Nicholson. Can you picture that?
No.
Yeah, me neither. I want to let that sit for a minute. Like, just people try to picture Jack Nicholson playing Napoleon. Anyway, Kubrick had a hard time making this happen for two reasons. The first is a very high-profile Napoleon film called Waterloo. Came out in 1970, and it was kind of a flop. It was a war epic, and it went to great length to recreate a lot of the battle scenes. It used 15,000 extras.
Yikes.
And all the extras had to be dressed accurately for the time period. They were all soldiers. So you couldn't just, like, pull some people off the street and throw them in the shot, you know? That 15,000 extras to this day is the most extras ever used in a film.
I was wondering, I immediately thought of Lord of the Rings and comparatively, but...
Well, it's funny that you say that. Because, so Waterloo, it was kind of a spectacular flop, given all the work that put into it. It didn't even earn back its budget in the box office, and critical reception at the time was less than kind. However, it is viewed a bit better today. You know, people really appreciate all the work that went into the battle scenes and, you know, and all that. And Peter Jackson cited it as a big inspiration for him and the epic battle scenes he'd go on to create in Lord of the Rings.
Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah.
I'm so smart.
So smart. So the second reason Kubrick couldn't make his Napoleon movie was Barry Lyndon, as I talked about.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
What time period does that film take place?
Barry Lyndon?
Yeah.
17th century.
Why is it called Barry Lyndon? Which sounds very just like a guy from 1993.
So it was actually based on a book that was written, I think it was written later. I think the book was written in the 19th century, but it's about an 18th century Irish rogue named Barry Lyndon, who kind of tries his hand at upward mobility to mixed success. Similar to Waterloo, though, not super well received at the time. It had an $11 million budget and only made $9.1 million in domestic box office. Yikes. International box office did keep it from being underwater like Waterloo was, no pun intended. But, you know, that's hardly a ringing endorsement. Critically, it was heavily praised for a few things, notably the cinematography. But overall, reception was pretty lukewarm. Interestingly enough, though, just like Waterloo, it's viewed much more favorably today than it was at the time. Most notably Roger Ebert, who, when it came out, gave it 3.5 stars, which already he liked it better than most other critics at the time did. But he later revised his rating up to 4 stars, which is the highest on his scale, and called it, quote, one of the master's best. It ranks 27th on BBC's list of America's greatest films. But, like I said, it was a flop back then. So with Waterloo being a flop and Barry Lyndon being a flop, studios were very hesitant to throw money behind a Napoleon period piece by Kubrick, given that every single one of those ingredients was recently a failure. So he had to consider using his boy Jack for something else. And here we are today.
A good choice.
Yeah, I don't want to overstate it, but certainly directly responsible for much of modern horror.
Okay, well, let's talk about it, shall we?
Let's do it.
I wrote that the movie begins suddenly, and I can't remember what I meant by that, but I know that I reacted to it when it started.
Yeah, so you actually... Is this the movie? Oh, that's abrupt.
Yeah.
I think it's because there was very little in the way of, like, production cards.
Oh, yeah.
It was just immediate, like, boom. And you have, like, that soundtrack just booming in, making you feel oppressed right away.
Yeah. It's very orchestral, lots of deep horns is what we're getting.
Yeah.
And we're following a car driving through a mountainous road. Being a Stephen King book, I assumed this took place in New England. I've also never read a Stephen King book, obviously, so I don't know, do they all take place in New England? I feel like a lot of them do.
Yeah, I mean, not literally all of them, but yeah, most of them. And the New England ties here they're from Vermont.
Right.
Even though it takes place in Colorado. And in the book...
It ends in Maine.
It ends in Maine, exactly.
Yeah. But it's very much not New England. It takes place in Colorado. And like Jason said, it's based on the Stanley Hotel in Colorado. Very like theatrical, large opening credits. And the traveling scene ends at a beautiful mountain resort hotel.
Yeah, and it's just worth pointing out the mountain they're driving up during that opening is very windy, very twisty, turny.
Oh, yeah.
They refer to it several times throughout the movie as Sidewinder.
Oh.
And the terrain, the layout of that mountain is part of what makes it so remote because that road is pretty much impossible to maintain in the winter.
Yes.
So,
like Jason said, this is the Overlook Hotel, which is based on the Stanley Hotel, but what we see is the Timberline Lodge in Oregon. The inside of the hotel was all shot on a soundstage in England, but anytime you see the outside, at least the physical hotel itself, that is the Timberline Lodge in Oregon.
would you go there? Like, would you stay there? Or is just like the outside being involved in this movie enough to scare you?
I did a little research on the Stanley Hotel myself and then also the Timberline Lodge, and I couldn't find any details about it being haunted. So, yes.
All right, fair enough.
People do go to that hotel, though, because of this movie, and I'll talk about that later. Then it says on the screen, The Interview. So this movie is segmented into like title cards, basically. It reminded me of a play, and I don't really know why, because they don't do that in plays. But I guess because it's acts, like a play is divided by acts, I kind of thought this is like a play.
And it's also at this point when they say his name for the first time. They say Jack.
Yeah.
And you were very angry. Is his character's name Jack?
Yeah.
And I think it's just because you couldn't, like, refer to him by a different name throughout
No,
this.
I had literally typed Jack because I didn't know his name yet because he was just walking into the hotel. And then they said Jack, and I was like, wait, his name is Jack? What?
I just figured it was because you hate using real names.
No, I mean, I'll call him the Joker throughout this if you want me to, because
Please
he
don't.
basically acts like it through the entire film. But he walks into the hotel.
Again, though, just throwing this out there, just like AHS came after The Shining.
No, I know. I did wonder multiple times in my notes, did the director of the first Batman movie just say, like, I want Jack because of The Shining? Because that's what it felt like. I also realized I don't think I've seen any other Jack Nicholson movies, but I'm realizing now that that's a lie because I have seen the other critically acclaimed Jack Nicholson movie, Anger Management.
Have you... But
I have seen Batman. So other than Batman, at this time, I was thinking I haven't seen him in anything else other than Batman, but I did see Anger Management.
what about As Good as It Gets?
No.
One
seen
Flew
it.
Over the Cuckoo's Nest?
No, never seen it.
Hold on.
Is that a book? I've never read the book either.
Yes, it's a book.
Is he in Dick Tracy?
No, I think you're just thinking of the Joker.
Okay. Probably.
Yeah, I'm looking at... we've watched The Departed. We've watched The Departed.
Oh, that's right. I blocked that from my memory because it's terrible.
You're literally the only person in the world who thinks that.
I'm okay with that.
It's a great movie.
And why do I think it's terrible? Because the accents are terrible and I can't get over it. If it was filmed in New York, I'd be fine. Anyway, back to The Shining. Jack is meeting with Mr. Ullman, who I guess he runs the hotel. We also meet Wendy and Danny there at their house somewhere in Colorado. She looks 16. I thought it was like an older sister at first.
Yeah, when she popped on screen, you said, is that Mackenzie Phillips?
They have the same face.
I mean, kind of.
That
Yeah, I could
long
see it.
face, eyes too big for the face.
I could see it. But my question that I wrote here is, where do you know Mackenzie Phillips from?
Like Sober Life on VH1, whatever that Dr. Drew show is.
Celebrity Rehab?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
She has a terrible story.
So when I was a kid, there was like a Disney Channel X-Files knockoff for kids called So Weird.
Oh, yeah. I've
And
seen that too.
She played the main character's mom in that show.
That's right.
And she's also a member of the New Mamas and the Papas in the 70s.
Yes.
After
I know
Mama
that
Cass
because
died.
of Celebrity Rehab.
Of course you did.
They're talking about moving to the hotel, I think, and Danny's not happy about it.
Yeah, and also in this scene, he introduces Tony, his like invisible
does.
friend, which you missed the first time we were watching it. Because then, like, when Tony pops back up, you were like, "What the fuck is that?"
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What a surprise. Back to Jack. He is talking about how he used to be a teacher, which I truly cannot picture for this character. Maybe like for the original character, sure, but not for this guy. If he's a teacher, he's not a nice teacher. He doesn't give me the warm and fuzzies.
Yeah, but I mean, I feel like if you're like a college writing teacher, you can totally be an asshole. Like you can just sit at your
so.
desk and you can drink rum.
I guess.
You know?
But I assumed he was like an English teacher, and English teachers are always the nicest teachers. So
Your English teachers were always the nicest teachers, which is why you got an English degree.
well, now he's a writer, and the hotel closes over the winter. When it was built, like however many years ago, 70 years ago from, this time when the movie was made, it was chosen for its scenic beauty and seclusion. Skiing and all those other winter sports were like not a thing. So it wasn't a big deal that they built this huge resort and closed it during the winter because, like you said, the road up to the mountain closes and it's impossible. The job is basically to maintain heat, repair damage as it occurs, which I just feel like it's so weird that there's not a permanent employee whose job this is. And also, why is this not some kind of like skilled labor position? Theoretically, I could just get hired to do this job and I don't know shit about nothing.
Well, the two things about that is they make kind of reference to Grady, the former caretaker, having done it for more than one season.
Oh.
So I feel like this is a role that, like, it's not a year-round employee, but it's a regular employee. And also, I think that's just like a product of the time. Like, I feel like as a man in the 70s, like, you were supposed to just be able to patch up your roof and fix a radiator if it broke.
I guess, yeah.
Like, I could not do either of those things today, but I feel like if I were born in like 1945, I would have to.
To me, it's like a red flag. Like, have you ever just been solicited for a job from Indeed and it's like, this job pays $200,000 a year and we think you're really qualified, and you're like, I'm not, and that's because it's a sales job or something, so you don't actually make $200,000 a year. That's like this, like, I'm unqualified for this and yet you want me. What's the story here? And oh, there's a story. It's a 5-month-long position. Jack is looking forward to the peace and quiet because he's working on a writing project. And they warn him, though, that the isolation can be challenging. Jack is unbothered. He says his wife and son will love it. And they're like, okay, but let me just, like, tell you a story.
Yeah, I love this because, like, Ullman, like, over the course of this conversation says, like, 2 or 3 times, very gently, very casually, like, the isolation can be really challenging. And I feel like he's just building to dropping this murder bomb on Jack.
Yeah.
Like, the isolation can be really tough. Speaking of tough isolation, last guy killed his whole family.
Yeah. It happened in 1970. Charles Grady, the winter caretaker, he had come up with his wife and 2 daughters. He was totally normal and seemingly suffered a mental break, killing his family in the hotel with an axe. And then he did kill himself.
And he says he killed them with an axe and stacked their bodies in a room in the West Wing in the floor and then put a shotgun in his mouth. That's exactly what Ullman says. And I think it's crazy. Like, why are you telling those details?
Man to man.
I guess you can just leave those details out. Like Jack, he takes it absolutely like a champ. I feel like he could have just said he suffered a mental break and killed his family and then himself. That's all you need to say. You don't need to give those details. And honestly, like, if they're having trouble filling this position, it's because Ullman just tells everybody all those details right up front. Just gloss over a little bit, buddy.
Jack's face is funny, though. He's kind of just like, that's a story. All right. But he says his wife likes hauntings and things. So and like true crime. She's basically like a modern true crime girl. And she'll just be fascinated by it. Back with the family, Danny is in the bathroom. He's standing in front of the mirror and he's talking. But he's talking to Tony, who is his imaginary friend. But it's a little more than that. Tony uses a creepy voice, and when he's talking, Danny moves his index finger.
Hello, Mrs. Torrance.
That was a character choice by Danny Lloyd. 7 years old, and he came up with that in his audition.
How is this kid not like an improv star?
He has never acted again.
His mom or something had to coach him on that. Like,
I'm sure.
There's no way he just pulled that out of his butt. I've met 7-year-olds. They're absolute idiots.
No. They're cute. He chose to do the voice, and he chose to move his finger and like flex it up and down, almost like he's like puppeteering with like his finger. Brilliant.
Yep, that's what I'm always doing when I move my finger like that.
That's how he stood out, though, to Stanley Kubrick, so that's how he got picked. Tony can tell the future because he's talking to Danny about moving to the hotel, and Tony tells him that his dad did get the job and will be calling to report the news, which he then does. Tony doesn't want to live in the hotel, but won't tell Danny why, and Danny pushes. So Tony shows him in his mind. Poor sweet little Danny sees the images, and his eyes and mouth widen with fear. It's basically like flashes of blood flooding from the elevator down the hall. You've all seen it before.
Iconic.
And a flash to the twins.
Iconic.
Next, Danny is in bed, visited by a doctor. He like passed out basically from what he was shown. The doctor, she asks Danny if he smelled anything funny or saw any flashing lights or anything strange while he was brushing his teeth, and he says no. She's like, okay, well, what were you doing before you were brushing your teeth? And he explains that he was talking to Tony, who is a little boy who lives in his stomach.
He said mouth.
Oh, yeah.
He said a little boy who lives in my mouth.
I think he says
which
stomach later at some point.
Also a Jeffrey Epstein quote. But
God.
I love this doctor, like from start to finish.
Yeah,
like,
I love her.
She's so smart, like trying to figure out if he had a stroke or a seizure, like right off the bat, but doing it in a way that she can talk to a kid.
Yeah.
You know, and then like as this scene unfolds and she has her conversations with Wendy, her reaction to some of the things Wendy says is just priceless. Like this doctor, I want her to take care of me if I ever go into a weird seizure state from my imaginary friend showing me blood.
Wendy does clarify that Tony is an imaginary friend, and then the doctor asks if Tony has ever asked Danny to do anything, but Danny says that he doesn't want to talk about Tony anymore. So the doctor's like, okay, that's fine, and just tells Danny that he has to stay in bed for the rest of the day. Then she and Wendy go outside to talk, and she says there's nothing physically wrong with him. She explains that episodes like this can just happen, perhaps brought on by emotional stuff, and then they might never happen again.
And, like, I know I just said I love this doctor, but that is such, like, a 70s doctor thing. Like,
I know.
I'm surprised she wasn't smoking a cigarette while she said it.
Yeah.
Like, just like, yeah, I don't know what it was, but it only happened once, so it's fine.
It
just
happens.
Give me a call if the kid has a stroke.
Wendy says they've been in Colorado for 3 months. They're from Vermont. And the doctor asks if Tony first appeared when they moved here, but he didn't. He's been talking to Tony since preschool when he really didn't adjust well. And then he got injured, so they had to keep him out of school. He had dislocated his shoulder, and the doctor asks how. Now, Wendy explains this very nonchalant, very like, oh, well, you know, Jack came home, he was working, he was drunk, he came home and Danny had scattered some things around the floor, and he just grabbed his arm a little too hard. It's fine.
Could have happened to anybody.
Yeah.
That's a line that gets echoed a couple times throughout this movie. Could have happened to anybody. And again, the doctor's face while she's saying
it's like silence.
Yeah. And Wendy is, you know, kind of like laughing about it a little bit. You know, she's trying to put on that show that women in this position tend to put on in these situations. And this doctor is having none of this bullshit. She is just staring at her open-jawed. And I'm 99% sure Kubrick cut this scene purposefully before the doctor's response, because there's no way that she wasn't just like, get the fuck away from Jack.
Yeah, yeah.
You need to leave now.
I definitely thought this scene was weird because I didn't really know the full characterization of everybody yet. And I definitely thought Tony was some kind of sign of abuse. There's a lot of theories out there that there's sexual abuse, trigger warning, to Danny that is not proven in any way in this film specifically. It depends on how you look at things, I guess. But initially, I thought that's what Tony was. We find out later what he really is, but But part of me also thinks there's more to it, that maybe there is. I don't know if I believe all the theories, but it's a coping mechanism of some kind. Like, he has this ability to see the future, essentially, is what Danny has. But why is there this other character that, like, protects him in this way?
The way I look at it is Tony is a part of Danny's subconscious, who is basically, so I mean, in the lore of the book and Doctor Sleep, which was a great movie, this ability is something that's found in a certain percentage of the population. And I always kind of viewed it as Tony is Danny's internal filter, kind of holding back the things that he doesn't want to actively talk about it, because he's kind of like, he's got this ability. It's like a radar or a radio antenna just taking in all signals, and he really has no control on how to turn that signal off or turn that signal on. So he's just taking in these things all the time. And Tony is kind of the internal mechanism that his brain came up with to filter through what's coming in and protect him from things like the Stanley Hotel.
Yeah.
That's just my like personal pet theory. I don't know my ass from my elbow, but that's just kind of how I always looked at it.
I like that. I also think, I wonder, like, just knowing what I've read about Kubrick, however you say it, I wonder if maybe he liked the voice change to make this have ambiguity, like confusion. Does it mean more than just exactly what you said? Like, is it representative of something else? Because there's lots of things that are purposely left unanswered in this. All right, the next scene starts with closing day. So now that's the second act. And they're driving to the hotel. Wendy's kind of just looking at the scenery, and she's like, isn't this where the Donna party went? And Danny asks what that is, so Jack explains, including like the cannibalism. But it's fine because Danny already knows about cannibalism from the television.
Yeah, he knows about it from the television, which is exactly how Jack says it when Danny says it, and I love that.
They arrive at the hotel, and Jack meets with Ullman. Wendy goes on a tour, and they leave the kid alone in the game room.
Real quick, when Wendy's like going on this tour, and Ullman is like introducing everything, he's like, we've had movie stars stay here, we've had 4 presidents stay here.
Yes.
And then Wendy goes, royalty? As if that's not fucking impressive enough. Like, stop at movie stars and 4 presidents. It's fine.
Well, I thought I would tell you a little history of the Stanley Hotel. We've covered some of it. It started construction in 1906 and finished in 1909. It was built in the Georgian architectural style as a luxury hotel. It had all the signs of luxury: running water, electricity, and telephones.
Running water, electricity, and telephones?
Yes, triple threat.
Amazing.
No heat, though, because it was designed as a summer resort. Famous guests include Stephen King, of course, Teddy Roosevelt, John Philip Sousa, the Emperor and Empress of Japan, royalty, Hollywood elite, and my favorite, the unsinkable Molly Brown.
The unsinkable Molly Brown. I read that too, and I meant to mention that to you like off record because I wasn't going to bring it up here, but I knew that you were like obsessed with Molly Brown.
Yes, from Titanic, if you aren't aware.
I'm just going to throw out another little Stanley fun fact here, given that you mentioned the electricity. So a couple years after it was built, I don't know if I'm stepping on something you're about to talk about here, there was an issue with the electricity, and they installed some gas lamps. And one of the few confirmed incidents at the Stanley Hotel was there was a bit of a gas leak. A maid went to light a gas lamp, and there was a huge explosion. She was thrown from the hotel, fell down a story, broke both her ankles. She lived, though. Nobody died. But about 10% of the hotel was damaged severely from this explosion.
Wow.
And this was just 2 years after they opened.
Wow. Well, room 407 is supposedly haunted by Lord Dunraven, who owned the land before Stanley bought it.
Yeah, he sold the land to Freeland Stanley, and I read up a little bit on him, and he sounds like he was kind of a con man. Like he was run out of town by the locals because he was trying to get them to invest in these schemes, and they were having none of it.
It does operate today year-round with a restaurant and spa, plus panoramic views of Lake Estes, the Rockies, and Long's Peak.
Sounds like a good time. Would you go there? Would you stay a night?
No, absolutely not. No, I don't even want to go to the Mount Washington, which is historically haunted.
Where is that here? Is that New
Yeah,
Hampshire?
that's in New Hampshire.
Oh, okay.
I stayed at the Mountain View Grand, which is also in New Hampshire and is historically haunted. I didn't know it was haunted when I stayed there, though. And now I do, and I never want to go back. I do because it's beautiful, but I'm too scared. Okay. Meanwhile, Danny is in the game room, alone, playing with darts, and this music starts. And I noted the music a lot because it's piercing. And it always means something is about to happen for the most part. We get a quick zoom in on his face, and then behind him near the door are the twins. And they're adorable in their blue dresses.
Yeah, so the direct quote from you is, they're adorable. They're so cute. It surprises me when they're like standing there, but they're so cute with their little smiles. That's what you said. Look, like when they first showed up, you gasped. Like it surprised you. And I was like, in my head, I was like, yes, like, because you were so cocky going into this. You're like, the girls don't scare me. And your gasp made me feel like, oh, maybe she's a little scared now. But then you immediately just talked about how adorable they were.
So cute. I love them.
Did you think they were still adorable when they showed them hacked to pieces, Brianna?
No, that was sad. They're staying in staff quarters, and it seems like they're not pleased with the accommodations. They're kind of using the words cozy and homey a lot, but I thought it seemed fine. I don't know.
Yeah, and also, who cares?
Yeah.
You can just hang out anywhere in the hotel. If you don't like your living room, go to a giant lobby.
I mean, you could probably go to the lobby, get one of the keys, and just stay in one of the rooms, and who would ever know?
Yeah, you can do literally anything you want for the next 5 months. Except order a pizza, which is why I'd be like, I couldn't do it.
That's the only reason.
If there were some way to get like pizzas like drone delivered up there, I'd be totally fine with this.
Touring the grounds, they learned it was finished in 1909, like the real hotel. And unlike the real hotel, it was built on an Indian burial ground.
Yeah, and Ullman just drops this with
casual,
very casual, no pretext, and it's never
no
even
deal.
like it's not even paused to like ruminate on. He's just like,
no.
So it's built on an Indian burial ground. Over here's the hedge maze, and nobody even questions it. It's terrifying.
Back inside, a woman brings over Danny because she found him like wandering around, and we meet the chef, Dick Halloran.
Fucking love Dick Halloran,
and he takes Wendy and Danny to the kitchen for a tour. Jack doesn't need a tour of the kitchen because he has a penis, so it's fine.
Yeah, I mean, Wendy's going to be cooking every meal, obviously.
Of course. Dick brings them down and is talking a lot. He seems super nice. Jack and Wendy call Danny Doc, and Dick calls him that. So Wendy asks, how did you know? I don't think I've called him that, and he just like laughs it off. In the pantry, that high-pitched noise comes back, so they're talking in the pantry about all the food, and Dick is just talking to Wendy, and then he looks over at Danny and through his mind asks Danny if he would like some ice cream. I was scared by Dick at this time. I did not know what this meant.
You were just threatened by the man offering a strange kid ice cream.
Yes.
That makes sense.
Yes.
One thing just to point out during this scene is, so there's a documentary that I've watched in the past, and we watched a little bit of...
We could not get through it.
Ourselves, yeah. This time around called Room 237. And what it is it's just filled with theories about what the movie means, the symbolism behind certain shots, et cetera, et cetera. Some are a little more plausible. Some are just like, dude, you're reaching. But one thing that they point out that always kind of stuck with me is that in this scene, when Dick, Wendy, and Danny are taking their tour of the kitchen, the layout of the kitchen isn't consistent, and they'll walk into one room and come out another. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of a theme over the course of the movie. And, you know, a lot of it can be chalked up to just like continuity errors normally. But I would say what we know about Kubrick and the detail and the, you know, extremes he goes to kind of create the shots he wants, this is probably intentional. And it just kind of serves to show you that the hotel is like a living, breathing thing, and the space inside is not static.
Right. The other group comes back to retrieve Wendy, and Halloran says, no worries, I was just about to get some ice cream. Do you want some, Doc? And so Danny goes with him. At this moment, I literally can't understand why Danny isn't too afraid to just be like, no thanks.
I have a note here that I said, Brianna thinks this guy is going to diddle Danny. I can just tell.
I thought he was evil.
You were so uncomfortable.
But I think that Danny is curious because he's like, whoa, this guy talked to me through my brain. I just think it's curiosity. So as they eat ice cream, Halloran asks Danny if he understands how he knew his nickname. He explains that his grandma and he could have full conversations in their minds, and that she referred to it as shining, which is such a pretty, sweet way of referring to this. And also, that's the name of the movie. And I was like, wow, that's how this all comes together. Halloran knows that Danny has the gift, and Danny doesn't want to talk about it. So he sweetly asks him why, and he says it's because Tony told him not to. So Halloran asks if Tony ever told Danny anything about the hotel, and he says he doesn't know because he doesn't always remember his premonitions. He asks him to think really hard, and Danny asks if he is scared of the hotel. He says no and explains that places are just like people, some shine and some don't. Danny asks if there's something bad here, and Halloran says when something happens, it can leave a trace of itself behind, which is what Dumbledore said about magic, and also, to pull it to something relevant, reminds me of The Grudge. It's like only bad things leave behind traces. Danny asks specifically about room 237, and Halloran denies that he's afraid of it or that there's anything weird, but that he should stay away. And he's like very severely telling him that.
Yeah, he's like, there's nothing in room 237. But don't go there.
Yeah.
Don't go there. Nothing there at all, but don't even look at it. As this scene is like unfolding, you were getting very excited. I could tell by the way you were typing, like, you know, because again, you didn't really know what this movie was about in those terms. And I think wandering into the like spiritual territory, like really just like did it for you. I could tell you were just like, your posture improved, you typed really fast, and you were just all about it after that.
I also thought this was just a super sweet scene. I like fell in love with Halloran. He's so kind, and obviously now any concerns about him have gone out the window. A little bit of trivia. So in the book, the feared room is room 217.
That's the room that Stephen King stayed at the Stanley. Was room 217.
Okay. So, but the Timberline Lodge, who provided the exterior shots, did not want that because they have a room 217, and they thought no one will want to stay in this room because they knew it being the exterior shots, this is the hotel that people are going to associate with the movie.
Totally fair.
So they don't have a room 237, so that's how it became room 237. However, room 217 at this hotel is like the most requested room to stay in.
At the one in Oregon?
Yeah. Which is weird because this hotel has nothing to do with it whatsoever other than exterior shots.
Yeah, people just know that was the room that Stephen King stayed
at. That it was supposed to
and...
be at the Stanley Hotel. Yeah, exactly.
That's funny. I feel like if we went there, I wouldn't want to stay in 217. Like, I don't think I'd need to.
No.
Yeah.
But I don't know that I would even think about it. Like,
yeah, that's what I mean. I don't mean I would avoid it. I just mean, like, it wouldn't even pop into my brain.
Another fact about this scene, it took 88 takes. I'm going to talk later about like Kubrick and all of his takes and how insufferable he is. But on Blu-ray commentary, they say that the close-up shot of Halloran, and I think they're referring to the one when it zooms in on his face when he's talking to Danny through his mind, took 148 takes, which is like the most for a close-up in history.
That is insane.
It's stupid.
148 takes. I mean, so even if that scene is 2 minutes long.
Yeah.
148 takes.
Yeah.
That's like 5 hours.
This took so long to film, it pushed back production on like 3 other films that were supposed to go on that soundstage in England. Yeah.
Crazy.
Mm-hmm. Next scene, a month later. Dun dun. Everything's fine so far. They've been there for a month, and it's cool as a cucumber. Wendy's bringing breakfast up to Jack, and Danny's racing through the hotel halls on a tricycle.
And I love this scene because, like, when Danny is racing through the hotel, you can hear when he goes on the carpet and comes off the carpet. And it is, like, it's a very, like, hypnotizing, like, calming. It's like the roaring of the ocean.
It's like ASMR. It's
it really
so
is.
Good. So
yeah.
I have a whole thing about this. So the movie was released in 1980, and the technology to do exactly this, to be following Danny like we are on his tricycle through the hotel, was only just introduced 5 years earlier. It required a stabilizer mount called a Steadicam, and Kubrick hired the inventor of it, Garrett Brown. He's actually the one who said on the Blu-ray that it took 148 takes. This particular scene required flipping it upside down and zooming it 2 to 3 inches off the floor while the operator rode in a specially designed wheelchair, so following him along. And then I just wanted to point out, I also noticed the sound of it transitioning from carpet to hardwood. And it was just like soothing, like you said. And apparently Kubrick didn't really know that that was happening until he was watching it after. And he was like delighted by it. And he was happy to keep that in the film. It's 11:30 and Jack is waking up. She asks if he'll take her for a walk after breakfast. And he said he should get some writing done first. I could not live like this, like just with this person, period. But I felt like they have no chemistry between each other at first. Did you get that vibe? Like the actors?
No, I mean, I never really, I guess, thought that deeply about it. I just kind of chalked them up to having an awkward vibe.
Yeah, I think there's two things potentially here. So at first I was like, either there's no chemistry between them or she's just a bad actress. But I think it's the character walking on eggshells with her husband, who is obviously an abuser. And also, it is the actress, Shelley Duvall, walking on eggshells due to her nightmarish director. Because they did not really have a good time. Or she specifically did not have a good time on set. He has, a reputation for repeated takes to an extreme. And she had a really, really difficult time working with him. She was so stressed that she was often like physically ill. So I think that plays into other parts where I felt she was severely overacting, but like I'll talk about some of the takes and how many times they had to do things. There's no way you can't overact if someone's asking you to do something 1,000 times. Anyway, they talk about how much they love it here, and Jack says he has this really intense feeling of deja vu, like he's been here before. Later, Jack is in the main area of the hotel where he's supposed to be writing, but he's aggressively throwing a baseball at the wall.
Hold on. It's not a baseball.
What is it?
It's like a tennis ball. Like it's like bouncing back and forth.
Oh, yeah, because it bounces.
Yeah, it bounces.
Duh.
I just felt like I had to clarify that because if he's just chucking a baseball at a wall, it's going to like put a hole in it. But
That's such a good point.
He's bouncing a ball off the wall.
Yeah.
And I don't even know if it was aggressive. It just sounds aggressive because it's so empty and it's just echoing.
I guess. He's kind of throwing it far, like across the room, so it feels aggressive.
Fair enough.
By the way, they've been here a month and there's not even a dusting yet. I think they were told to come too early. It's really rude.
Well, I mean, winter is notoriously fickle.
Winter's
Sometimes we get 2-foot storms on Halloween. Sometimes we get 2-foot storms on May 1st.
But this was like before global warming was a thing, so...
But it's up in the Rocky Mountains. They get a lot more snow.
The music sounds spooky, but they're kind of having fun. And then we hear this like piercing piano and they hit a dead end in the hedge maze. Meanwhile, Jack is wandering around and goes to a table replica of the hedge maze. And as we look overhead, like he's looking down at it, we see Wendy and Danny in the middle of the maze. This at first I thought was like really trippy. I was like, oh, what's happening? Like, is he controlling them in the maze or like some weird shit like that? But it's just like a transitional kind of scene.
Yeah, Kubrick does a lot of transitional shots that are kind of trippy, I guess would be the good word for it.
And the way, today they would do this obviously is with like a drone because it would just be a relatively easy, I assume, overhead shot. But obviously drone technology wasn't available. So they had the crew make a reproduction of the center of the hedge maze. And then they brought it next to a tall apartment complex. And like hanging off of the roof of the complex, they got the shot and then spliced it with a shot of the model of the maze photographed in scale. I barely even know what that means, but it sounds really complicated and I don't understand how they figured that out.
Sounds really cool.
Then the music becomes feverish, like something is about to happen, and then bang, it just says Tuesday on the screen. And I'm pretty sure I jumped and said, God damn it, the music.
Yeah, for sure.
Wendy's in the kitchen. She's listening to the news. A snowstorm is coming. Danny's pedaling around on his bike again. Okay, so this is where I want to talk about the carpeting because it's like really pretty. It's that like hexagon. It's like orange, black, and red, I think. And it's just like this 1970s vibe, I think. The entire hotel is a mix of styles, like interior design. There's Southwestern style. There's like grandma chic in the hotel rooms. And then there's Art Deco, like 1920s look all about it. And that was done on purpose, as with everything else in this film. It was pulled together by inspiration gathered by scouts sent to various hotels across the United States. and was intentionally patchworked to like feel unsettling. And I think this combined with the difficult to navigate hotel just creates that confusion. Like you're lost in this maze of a hotel and there's crazy shit happening. Oh, and apparently there's some kind of red in almost every single scene in the movie. There's like at least a spot of red. You've got red on you. Throwback to our last episode.
Good ref.
Danny slows down at room 237 and he's visibly unsettled, but he gets off his bike and goes up to the door. He looks adorable, by the way. He's wearing these cute little overalls and has red Converse on. Room 237 has double doors, so it's super classy. He turns the knob, but it's locked. There's a flash to the twins, and then Danny gets back on his bike and pedals away. Later, Jack is typing feverishly. Wendy checks in, all cheerful, and he's just a dick to her. He's basically like, every time you come in here, it interrupts my flow. Get the fuck out and don't come back.
And at this point, we had to pause the movie and just discuss whether Jack was actually abusive or if this was just how men used to talk to women. And I had to just like kind of tell you, like, no, he's abusive. It's okay. It's okay to say that he's abusive.
You didn't have to tell me. You thought you had to tell me, but I knew. I'm not just going to blame the patriarchy on this one, okay? Boom, Thursday. It's a blizzard, and Wendy and Danny are having fun in it. Jack is by the window. That piercing music comes back, and he's got this creepy-ass Joker face on, but his eyes are looking up, as almost like he's becoming possessed or something.
Yeah, his eyes are just kind of glazed over. I personally didn't see any Joker here. Maybe that's just me. But it was definitely a creepy shot. It was the kind of shot that creeped me out when I was a kid. Just him kind of staring blankly, almost like somebody in a psychiatric ward.
Yeah.
You know, just completely checked out and not vacant.
Boom.
I mean,
Saturday.
not here.
Boom, Saturday. You ruined my boom. The blizzard and piercing music continue. Jack is typing. Wendy figures out that the phone lines are down because, of course. And she calls what I thought were like deputies, but I think it's just forest services. It's like not even the police.
Yeah, it's like the ranger service.
So she calls to them via radio and they're like, yeah, it's usually out till spring. Just leave your radio on for safety. It's fine. Cool.
I love the use of over. They're having a full-on conversation like, how you guys hanging out down there? Over. And I feel like over like promotes speaking concisely and getting to the point. And like I just want to start talking like that in everyday life so I don't have to like have small chat with cashiers. You know, no offense to, you know,
to cashiers.
Cashiers or, you know.
Here's my card, over.
Yeah. I just
have a nice day, over.
That would make my day so much easier.
Danny's on his bike again. We've got that frantic music happening, and he hits a dead end, and we see the twins. And now they talk to him, and they say, hello, Danny. And they don't say it that nicely, but he looks scared, and they say, come in and play with us, Danny. Then he sees that they were axed to death, so he sees that in his brain. It's just so much blood.
It's like a quick jump to a still shot of the girls chopped up, like a leg here, an arm there.
Yeah.
Very sudden.
He covers his eyes, and when he uncovers them, they're gone. And he says, Tony, I'm scared. And Tony says, remember what Mr. Halloran said. It's just like pictures in a book, Danny. It isn't real.
Love that.
I'm so sad for him. This sweet little boy. I felt like that's the whole movie. You know, if you think about, like, seeing something scary, you just cover your eyes and then it goes away. But these images are happening in his sweet little head, and he can't get away from them. But don't be afraid for the real Danny Lloyd, because he was shielded from like so much of this. In 2017, he said that he thought what he was filming was a family drama in a regular hotel. He didn't even know it was a horror movie. He was also not allowed on set for certain scenes, and specifically remembers being isolated from set when Mr. Halloran was killed. When it was released, he was only allowed to see a 10-minute version made for children. I need to see that 10-minute version. Like, how can they make that for children?
I'm sure it was, like, specifically for him.
Yeah.
But, you know, that does kind of make you think about a lot of the more iconic scenes. he's somewhere else, or it's off screen. You know, when he eventually later in the movie goes into room 237 and gets hurt, we don't see it.
Right.
When in the famous "Here's Johnny" scene, he's out the bathroom window. He's not even in the bathroom with Wendy. And you know, when the whole scene happens in the lobby or the main room with the stairs, and Wendy hits Jack with the bat, Danny is not there. He's seeing it through The Shining.
Right.
That element of the story really helped them insulate Danny from this.
Yeah. And it's just a testament to his acting, because I feel like I've given kid actors shit on this before for not being good, but he's not even seeing anything, and his face is showing so much when he has to act scared or like surprised by something. He does such a good job. He really gets it across.
Yeah, actually, the next scene that's coming up is Danny having this conversation with Jack.
Yes, on Monday. Boom.
Monday, boom. Danny is talking to Jack in their, you know, little apartment in the bedroom where Jack is. He's like sitting on the bed. Jack is sitting on the bed and Danny's talking to him, and Danny is scared and he's asking like, are you going to hurt us? You know, and Jack pulls him into his lap and he holds him and he's like, I love you more than anything in the world and I would never ever hurt you. Except the way that he says it is not very reassuring. It is very detached. It's very scary. And Danny's reactions in this scene, like the facial shots that they show of him reacting to things Jack are saying, it really makes you like feel deeply for him, kind of afraid of Jack, and, you know, not just what's happened, but what is going to happen.
Yeah.
I really feel like the shot was just so powerful.
Right.
And Danny just really sold it.
Yeah, and it's supposed to be an uncomfortable scene, but it should be a nice, sweet moment between a father and son. Like, it starts off with him being like, I just want to check in, like, how are you liking it here? I hope you're liking it here. And in any normal situation, this would be like, oh, what a great dad. But you can tell Danny is uncomfortable and doesn't want to be sitting in his dad's lap and isn't sure of what's going to happen next. And when he does ask if he's going to hurt him, he's like, did your mother tell you that? Like, where did you get that from?
Yeah, and then he says, I would never do anything to hurt you, Danny.
You already did, first of all.
Yeah, he already did.
So,
but like, I can't imagine Jack Nicholson saying that in a way that doesn't sound sinister.
No, I know.
Like,
yeah.
I can't imagine him sounding comforting.
No.
At all.
And compare that to the scene between Danny and Halloran and how, like, warm and sweet and comforting that was. In, by the way, a Stark kitchen that is cold by nature. And they're in this, like, hotel room, which should be warm and cozy. As they've said multiple times, this room is cozy. And yet it is, like, the coldest scene. Boom, Wednesday. Wednesday is big, guys. It's about to go down. Danny's playing on the carpet with trucks and a baseball. Now it's a baseball, right? It rolls toward him.
Yes.
But no one is there, which is very season 1 American Horror Story.
Which is what you said at the time.
But they didn't hear me.
No, I know, but my point is that was when I wrote down.
Oh, okay. He walks down the hall a little and reaches room 237, which is open. Now, why the hell is he even playing within feet of room 237? I'll never know. Meanwhile, Wendy is checking the boilers. So she's doing everything. Jack is doing nothing except writing, quote unquote.
Well, I mean, to be fair to Wendy's knowledge, he's typed like hundreds of pages. He is writing a lot. We don't know at this point that he's not really writing, but it does seem like he's been writing a lot.
Yeah. Suddenly there's a scream and she runs out. It's Jack who has fallen asleep like at his desk. And she wakes him up. He's distressed, saying he had the most terrible nightmare, that he killed them. Specifically that he chopped them up. Dude, you could have left that part out.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, just like Omen, like, you could gloss over the details here. There is no reason to give all these details.
Meanwhile, Danny is slowly walking into the room from the opposite side, and Wendy tries to say, like, oh, Dad just got a headache, and tells Danny to go upstairs. But he keeps walking, and he's walking very slowly. Like, obviously something has gone down. So she comes over to him, and she sees bruises on his neck, and Danny is sucking his thumb, and he's not speaking. So, regression. His sweater and shirt are also ripped at the neckline. Jack is staring at them, and she says, you did this to him, didn't you? She picks him up, and they run off.
But that makes me wonder, if Jack was just sleeping, how long had Wendy been leaving him unattended. Like,
I know.
When does she think Jack did this?
Yeah.
Not defending him, obviously.
No.
But
and there's theories that like Jack did do it. And there's a lot of weird theories about what Room 237 actually is. And I didn't dig enough to fully understand, but there are theories that he did it. And I'm like, but why? Because even Danny says later who did it. So I don't know. Jack now starts walking down the hall, and now he is making these weird, aggressive body gestures.
But, like, we've all kind of been there. Like, when,
what?
I'm just saying, like, when you're mad at something and you're just, like, huffing down the hallway, like, you know, just, like, throwing your arms at your side, like, punch in the air, like, oh, I hate this. I'm so angry right now, and I don't know what to do with my body.
Okay. It was insane, and
I'm just saying, we've all had those moments. That's all I'm saying.
I felt like, okay, Jack Nicholson is it for this role. Apparently, Robert De Niro, Harrison Ford, and Robin Williams were all considered for this role. Can't see it. Especially Robin Williams. And I know he's done, like, serious stuff, but I just can't.
Oh, yeah. Robin Williams could have done it, but he would have had to have had a beard. That's the rule. Like, serious Robin Williams has to have a beard. But he definitely could have pulled this off. I think it would have changed the trajectory of his career, though. I don't think he would have been the lovable, funny man that we know him as.
He goes into the Gold Room, which is the very, like, 1920s ballroom, and he heads straight to the bar, which should be empty because at the beginning, Ullman said, like, oh, yeah, we get rid of all the alcohol because of the insurance. It's just better that way.
And one thing we also didn't mention that we probably should have in the beginning is when Wendy is telling the story of how Jack hurt Danny. He came home, he was like drunk, and he has stopped drinking since then.
Oh, that's right.
Wendy mentions, she makes it a point to say he's been sober since then and he's been great, which, you know, that part's true, good for him, you know, at least he's doing something. So him walking up to the bar is a very heavy moment in itself, because this is somebody that's been on the wagon and is dealing with all of this, and he just broke, went right to the bar.
He sits down and says to himself he'd give his goddamn soul for a glass of beer. And then he rubs his face and smiles and says, "Hi, Lloyd, a little slow tonight, isn't it?" And kind of like laughs maniacally. I wrote maniacally. I don't specifically remember, but
yeah, I mean,
we're full Joker mode now, so everything is maniacal.
It's not a Joker laugh, though. I think that's just your only exposure to Jack Nicholson.
Correct.
It's not Joker-like, because I feel like Joker-like is very, like, loud and cackly, but it's like unhinged. It's like, because it's like a quiet, like, it's a subtle laugh. It's like, you know.
And there actually is a Lloyd, and there's a full lit up bar. This also feels like an entirely, this scene confused the crap out of me, and I'm only now coming to, like, understand what it all means, but it feels like an entirely different personality is coming from Jack. He seems to know Lloyd, and I think the ending makes this make more sense, but I feel like this actually is a different personality, and he does know the bartender.
Yeah, at the end of the scene, you went, okay, but who the actual fuck is Lloyd? You were so thrown off by this.
Jack talks about how he loves his son and hates his wife. Meanwhile, Wendy is running through the halls with a bat. She's looking for Jack. And she finds him and says that there's someone in the hotel because Danny said a crazy woman tried to strangle him. He does drink, by the way. He is actually drinking a drink. Yeah. Physically drinking a drink from a ghost.
Okay, so two notes on this. The first, and this is so small, but it infuriates me and also makes me wonder, because this doesn't seem like something Kubrick would have missed. But
is it the money?
No.
Okay.
Jack asks for bourbon.
Yeah.
And Lloyd gives him Jack Daniels, which is not bourbon. That's Tennessee whiskey.
Yeah.
As Chris Stapleton famously taught us.
You know, the thing about being and having the reputation of someone like Stanley Kubrick is you can just make as many mistakes as you want. And people would be like, no, 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 no. Let me tell you the brilliance behind this that you're just not seeing.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, it's an allegory for the coal mines of Tennessee where the miners would go home and beat their wives or something. Like, you're absolutely right. Because, like, there are so many little things in this movie, and, like, just by odds of it, some of them have to be continuity errors.
Yeah.
But we're not allowed to call any of them continuity errors.
No, it's perfect. It is a perfect film.
But the other thing is, he does have a drink, but it is important to note that when Wendy comes in there, he's not holding a drink. She doesn't see him with a drink.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you're right. she tells him that, and Jack's like, you're crazy. But she's like, no, an old woman in a tub in room 237 did it. Cut to someone watching TV. And then we zoom out and we see feet and legs on a bed, and it's Mr. Halloran.
Also, a nice painting of a beautiful naked woman right above the TV.
Yes, and also another right above his bed.
Yeah.
His face is fully zoned out, like you might think he's dead. But what I believe is happening, because we also bop over to Danny, who's like drooling and shaking. Danny is shining to him, right? Like sending him a message.
That's
and
how
he's showing him what's going on. So Halloran's face goes from like zoned out, not even paying attention, to like, holy shit, what is going on?
Yeah, and from the news report on TV, he's in Miami, Florida.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Which I don't know if maybe that's why Danny is like shaking. Maybe it's just so hard because the distance is so far. Yeah.
Jack goes to room 237 and he walks through the suite and into the bathroom. Amazing bathroom, by the way. It is green. Everything is green. The toilet is green. The tub is green. The sink is green. I friggin' love this.
It's amazing to me that you can say everything is green and then follow that up with I love it. It's amazing, because it's so ugly. It's so ugly.
It's so ugly. It's right. It's so good.
That's what people said about me.
Anyway, you can kind of see that there's definitely a body in the tub, and then a hand moves the curtain. It turns out it's a pretty topless woman. And now Jack, who was afraid and tentative, is now smiling, as though this person didn't just try to strangle his son, probably. She gets out of the tub.
Well, I just want to throw out there. So that was your reaction as we were watching this. You were just like disgusted with Jack. You're like, this woman tried to strangle your son, and all you care about is that she's hot.
Yeah.
But, like, it's ghosts. Like, it is playing with his mind. This isn't just full, sane, 100% there Jack just being a horn dog for this hot woman.
Okay, it sounds like you're making a lot of excuses for an abuser.
No, that's not what I'm doing. I'm just saying that it's shown pretty clearly over the course of this film that whatever issues Jack had or has are exacerbated by the hotel. And he is spiraling just incredibly down, like very sharply down. I don't think it's a stretch to say that while he might have hit Danny again, if they had not come to the hotel, he probably wouldn't have tried to kill them with an axe.
Probably.
I think that's fair to say.
Maybe.
So I'm just saying, I think you have to look at some of these incidences through the lens of the supernatural.
Oh, okay.
That's all I'm saying.
They walk toward each other. By the way, just full nudity, like full.
Yeah, also a quote from you. Wow, full frontal. You were impressed.
And she touches like his stomach and moves her hands up to his neck, which I thought she was going to strangle him. But they make out instead. And they make out until he sees her body reflection in the mirror. And it's like very old and flesh is falling off of her body.
Yeah, this is the scene that probably sticks with me the most and like makes me the most uncomfortable, probably because, like you said earlier, it's the one that hasn't been memed to death.
Exactly. Yeah.
This is the
was
only
out
scene
of left field.
Yeah, this is the only scene that still carries weight.
Yeah. There's also a dead body in the tub, but like alive. And the one outside of the tub is laughing like crazily. Jack runs out of the room, but you can still hear the laughter in the hallway. So, like I said, this comes out of left field. It seemingly makes no sense whatsoever to the rest of the film. So it's like, what does this mean? So, of course, there's lots of theories. There's theories relating this to like the sexual abuse theory that, again, I'm not going to get into because I didn't read fully. But one theory says that this woman represents the overall seductive power of evil that inhabits the hotel and is working to control Jack. So that's like what you just said. Kissing her is his submission to those evil forces and the official turning point for him.
So continuing that analogy, would the gross old woman be him like seeing what he's become and being unhappy with it?
I like that. I don't know.
Oh, I thought I was cutting you off to say what you were about to say.
No, it didn't. I didn't read any further. It didn't really go on. There is just like a lot of like weird sexual stuff in this scene, the naked lady pictures. One thing that we didn't talk about, because I didn't actually notice it when we watched the movie, but we saw it later, is when they come to the hotel, Jack is sitting in the lobby and he's actually reading a Playgirl magazine in the lobby. And one of the guys comes up behind him over his shoulder, who would then be able to see what he's looking at.
And it's just worth pointing out here also, Playgirl is naked men. Not there's anything wrong with that.
That's a good point.
Not there's anything wrong with that. But that puts it even more outside of the quote-unquote norm for that moment. Because, like, it's weird to be looking at any pornography magazine in a hotel lobby.
Yeah.
So I've been told by the police. But it's doubly so that it was a Playgirl from a man who throughout the rest of the entire movie shows no sign of interest in men at all.
Right. Mr. Halloran tries to call the hotel, but it doesn't go through because, again, the phone lines are dead. Wendy is waiting for Jack in their room. He comes back and he says that he found nothing and that based on Danny's history of having some issues, he must have done it to himself. Meanwhile, Danny
Which, by the way, if, like, this weren't a haunted hotel, that theory holds a little water, right?
Sure, yeah.
Just throwing that out there.
Yeah.
Because Wendy was just not about it at all. She was just like, absolutely not. There has to be somebody here.
Well, yeah. I mean, I feel like she's going to believe her son because, like, why would he make that up? That's crazy. But, like, either way, she's like, we should get him to a doctor, but we'll get there. Danny's just lying in bed in the dark. His eyes are wide, and he sees a flash of red rum. Like I said, Wendy says, you know, whatever it was, we need to get Danny out of the hotel. And Jack's like, you mean leave the hotel? Then he starts raging at her, saying she's ruining everything, and this is typical for her to do. He storms out and goes to the kitchen, and he starts smiling, and he's knocking stuff over as he goes. Then he hears music, walking down the hallway toward the gold room, which is fully decorated.
Yeah, you got really excited as they started showing
It's
decorations.
classy as hell. Yeah, I knew.
For those of you who don't know Brianna, she is absolutely obsessed with the Roaring 20s.
Yes.
And anything like Art Deco or like
I'm
20s
convinced
inspired.
I had a past life in that time and that my husband killed himself in the crash of 1929.
Jesus.
I firmly believe that I was
That's so
rich.
dark.
I was rich until, and that's why I hate the stock market. The stock market is fake and I hate it. And it's because my husband killed himself.
I mean, that's the only explanation for hating the stock market. So, must be true.
Halloran calls the Forest Services to ask them to radio the hotel. And then Jack goes into the ballroom. It's full on 1920s, my dream party, classy as hell. And he rolls up to the bar and orders from Lloyd, who gives him a drink, but refuses his money. Now, the first time Jack, which was moments ago, was at the bar, he had no money, but it was fine. Now he magically has money that he wants to give, and the bartender is like, your money's no good here.
He had money last time.
No, he didn't.
He made it a point.
He pulled it out, and then he was like, looks like I'm a little short. He said that.
Okay.
And then it was like, no big deal. And then later, he now has money somehow. So again, is Stanley brilliant, or is this a continuity error? I don't know. But he won't take his money because whoever's buying the drink for him is like, your money's no good here. Jack gets up, he gets his drink, he gets up, and a butler bumps straight into him. And what does he spill on him?
I knew you were going to ask that. I already had it written down and ready
Thank
to go.
you. I knew you would.
Advocaat, which is a traditional Dutch alcoholic beverage made from brandy, sugar, and eggs.
Okay, I was going to say it's milky, but also yellowy. So
Yeah.
that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's Dutch,
and
isn't that weird?
disgusting, yeah. So because this butler has spilled this milky, eggy substance all over him, he's like, we need to go to the bathroom and clean you up. They go to the reddest bathroom in existence.
And one thing that they pointed out in room 237 here as well is the path they take into the bathroom. The camera kind of follows in a circle, and if you track the turns that they made, they end up right back in front of the bar where Jack spilled the drink. So it kind of further plays into the idea that this isn't actually happening. This is something in Jack's head because he's standing in the same spot.
Love that. Yeah. The butler is Delbert Grady, who says that Jack is the important one. So he doesn't need to clean himself up because Jack's the important one here. Jack recognizes the name Grady as the caretaker who killed his family, except that happened in 1970 and we are clearly in 1920.
And also the former caretaker who killed his family. His first name was not Delbert.
Right.
But
It's
this
Charles.
man's name. Yes, exactly.
Delbert is like, no, I don't recall doing that, but you've always been the caretaker. I should know, sir. I've always been here.
Yeah. I really you've always been the caretaker here.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's kind of an important allusion to
Yes.
the end.
So the conversation here goes from like Delbert being a butler, he's serving people, it's fine. You've always been the caretaker. And then it shifts. And he's like, did you know that your son is attempting to bring an outside party into this situation? And they refer to Halloran very inappropriately.
Yeah, they say the N-word with the hard R several times.
Yeah, it's so unnecessary.
The third time you yelled at the TV, stop saying it.
Yeah, it was stupid. It was not necessary. Grady encourages Jack to give his family a good talking to. He says that his girls didn't care for the hotel at first, and when one tried to burn it down, hell yes, queen, he corrected them and did the same to his wife when she tried to stop him. Wendy is in their room coming up with an escape plan. She's like, we'll use the Snow Cat, which is like this giant vehicle. She'll also call the Forest Service first so they know their plans. In case they don't make it, they'll be able to look for them. Meanwhile, Danny, or Tony, essentially, is repeating red rum in his room. And Wendy comes in and says, Danny isn't here, Mrs. Torrance. By the way, so that basically means, like, this is very like Gollum from Lord of the Rings, but like Tony has overtaken Danny at this point to protect him because he's at his wit's end. The Forest Service is calling in. Jack hears it, so he breaks the radio. And when Halloran calls back to check in with the Forest Service, they report that no one picked up. They're not concerned, though. Boom, 8 a.m. So, wow, Wednesday was a day, okay? It is now, theoretically Thursday. Mr. Halloran is en route via plane to Colorado. Jack is typing furiously, and upon landing, Halloran arranges a Snowcat rental through a buddy. Danny and Wendy are watching cartoons, and Wendy says she's going to go talk to Daddy, and he says, yes, Mrs. Torrance. She grabs the bat on her way out. Jack's not at his desk, but she looks over his work, and this is where she sees the pages and pages and pages and pages of all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy.
Yeah, this is another scene that very, very creepy, very unsettling, but has just been memed to death. We watched an episode of Family Guy, a brand new episode of Family Guy, the night before we watched this movie that referenced this scene. Mm-hmm. And that's, 42
shot
years
for
later.
shot, basically.
Shot for shot, yeah.
Which is very Family Guy.
So this is a scene that really, I feel like, has kind of lost its impact over the years. But really, if you stop and think about it outside of the context of all that pop culture stuff, is just terrifying. He has been writing in there several hours a day for a month at least. And, the paragraphs are formatted. Like, it's not just the same line over and over again. He's typing these stories out of just this sentence, and he, and I always kind of took it to be in his brain he's typing a story. He doesn't realize that he's
100%.
typing that.
Yeah.
And it's such a good, awful thing, and it just bums me out that it's never going to land the way that it used to.
Yeah, it still has that weight to it a little bit. It's hard to say if it would ever be scary, more disturbing. There is the idea that always scares me of just losing your mind and not even knowing that you've lost your mind. That's the scariest thing. And I think that's what we see here. And it's almost like, if you didn't know he's losing his mind, look, here are the pages to prove it.
And one thing I always wondered, but never really looked up or anything, is Kubrick, this can't be true. We would have heard about it. It would be well known. But would it surprise you at all if he made Jack Nicholson sit in front of a typewriter for 30 hours and bang this out?
It's not known, like you said, but it is assumed that it was a secretary of Kubrick's who wrote it.
Right, but I'm just saying, he has such a reputation that if you had heard that it was Jack Nicholson, you would just believe that without
honestly
a second thought. You'd just be
you have to do this to get in character.
Yeah.
Do it. But what he did do, knowing that this phrase, which to me just makes no sense, what is this? He knew that wouldn't translate with the same effect in other languages. So for Italian, I assume for the Italian version of this film, it says, the morning has gold in its mouth. For the German version, it says, never put off until tomorrow what can be done today. And for Spanish, it says, no matter how early you get up, you can't make the sun rise any sooner. Those are fortune cookies. Those are all good for fortune cookies.
I like the German one the best, I think. That's the most unsettling to me.
Yeah, kill your family now. Don't wait till tomorrow.
The other thing that I was thinking as we were watching this scene is anytime you and I watch a movie, and any movie, doesn't have to be scary, but any movie that has a scene that involves a woman snooping around or doing something that she's not supposed to be doing is something that always gets you really on edge. Did that like kick in for you during the scene?
I simply knew it would occur. I just simply knew. And she wasn't actually sneaking. Like, I usually don't like when they're physically moving around a space and collecting things. She essentially came upon it, but I knew he would appear behind her, which is exactly what happens.
Yeah.
So he surprises her by coming in from behind, asking, "How do you like it?" And she's just grabbing the bat. She's on the defense. Danny is shining and can hear their conversation, I think, is what we're supposed to get from that.
Yeah.
Jack says that they should discuss what to do with Danny, and she wants to take him to the doctor, and he's just like mocking her. He rages at her, saying, you know, to leave means she's never given him a thought, like the contract, his job, the responsibilities of all this. Now she's walking away from him slowly backward, and eventually they reach the stairs, and she continues to now walk backwards up the stairs. And eventually she just starts swinging the bat at him, and he's like kind of taunting her, trying to grab at the bat. Eventually he says sarcastically about how much he loves her, and then he says, "Wendy, darling, light of my life." And we had to pause the movie.
I was laughing hysterically.
Because what is it that you say to me?
I have to say that on a podcast?
Yeah.
Darling, angel, light of my life.
And so then I was like, well, he's going to kill me. That's clearly what's happening here.
And she's looking to me for reassurance. And I am just laughing hysterically, realizing that probably like on a subconscious level, like the first time I said this in sort of a joking way, I probably got it from this movie. And she's just so creeped out. And I am just laughing and laughing and laughing. That was a good time. To be fair, earlier in the movie, Jack is talking to Danny about how much he loves the Overlook, and he's like, "I want to stay here forever and ever and ever."
Oh, yeah.
And that is 100% something you've said to me. So we're both going to murder each other. It's fine.
Finally, he's honest, and he says, "I'm not going to hurt you. I'm just going to bash your brains in." And she actually hits him with the bat in his hand, and then I think hits him again, and he falls down the stairs and is knocked out. It's a solid fall.
Yeah.
Wendy drags Jack into the pantry and locks him in. He wakes up, but he's got like a good gash on his head that is really just messing with him, so he's not okay. And his ankle is like fucked up. He's able to come to his senses though, and he tries to kind of bargain with her. He says he needs a doctor, and she says, you know, "I'm leaving, but I'll come back with a doctor." And then he's like, "You're not going anywhere. Go check out the radio and the snowcat." So she goes and looks, but he like ruined the radio and the snowcat, so they can't go. Boom, 4 p.m. Jack is asleep in the pantry and awoken by a knock. It's Grady, the butler. He's not thrilled that Jack has yet to fulfill his duties, and he says that they're all beginning to wonder if his heart is really in it. And Jack asks for one more chance, so Grady unlocks the pantry.
And this is notable as the only supernatural thing that you can confirm happened in this movie.
Yeah.
Because, you know, everything else can be chalked up to cabin fever, basically. Mm-hmm. Just isolation driving people crazy. Obviously, you know, it's been set up throughout the course of this movie that the hotel is causing that, so it is supernatural. But even if you wanted to say it's not supernatural, that's just what they're ascribing to this very real phenomena of cabin fever. This is the one part that you have a hard time explaining. Mm-hmm. I know some of the things that we read and watched, you know, kind of alluded to maybe Danny could have done it. That theory that we're not talking about with Jack's relationship with Danny kind of plays into that a little bit. But for the most part, this is just a purely ghost moment. The hotel unlocked the door.
Yeah.
Which, just to repeat myself, does not happen without a doubt the entire rest of the movie.
Yeah.
So
outside, Halloran is making his way up the mountain in the snowcat, so he's coming.
What a fucking hero.
I love him. Wendy is sleeping somehow, And Danny is walking around the room repeating,
"Red rum! Red rum!"
and he takes hold of the knife that she had grabbed in the kitchen when she locked Jack in the pantry. And he also grabs her lipstick and writes "Red rum" on the door, which is what he has seen whenever he flashes and sees red rum. Now he's screaming it, and she wakes up.
And he's also, just one more thing, while he's carrying the knife around the room, he's carrying it blade up with the blade end facing him. Like if he trips, he's falling face first into that knife. Yeah. Someone needs to teach this kid some knife skills.
She sees the writing on the door in the mirror and realizes it says murder. Jack is now at their door with an axe, and she locks them in the bathroom. It has a small window, and Danny is able to escape through it, but she cannot shimmy herself through.
And as we're working up to this, famous scene, Jack Nicholson swinging the axe, I read somewhere a long time ago that he did a lot of training on how to swing this axe effectively, like a fireman would break down the door, basically, not like a madman just hacking away at a door. And as he's taking these hacks at the door, the camera is tracking the head of the axe. So when he pulls the axe back, the camera goes back. When he brings it forward, the camera goes forward with the axe. And it's almost hypnotic, just in the rhythm of him bringing it back and throwing it forward, bringing it back and throwing it forward. And that's just a shot that I always really liked. It just always kind of stuck with me because it's just, it's like the tricycle sounds. Yeah. It's just very pleasing aesthetically.
Jack is now in the room trying to axe down the bathroom door. Wendy is by the door against the wall, just screaming, seemingly overacting. And once he breaks through enough, he sticks his face in through the door and says, "Here's Johnny."
A scene that's been done to death and whatever. But personally, I always found he breaks down the door to the apartment with the axe, and then he breaks down the door to the bathroom. When he breaks down the apartment door, as he's like poking his head in, he's like, "Wendy, I'm home." Yeah. And that was always creepier to me than the "Here's Johnny."
Yes.
Maybe it's because we grew up with Jay Leno and not Johnny Carson, but that was always a little more sinister to me.
Yeah, and that line, "Here's Johnny," was improvised.
Really?
Yeah. Which it's so weird to me that Kubrick would allow improvisation. That seems like it would throw everything off for him. And okay, you can try that for one take out of 600, but I'm not going to take that take,
Well, like I said, Jack's his boy. That's his Napoleon there.
I guess, yeah.
You don't question your Napoleon.
But also, so speaking of having to take axe lessons or whatever, he chopped down 60 doors. 60.
Dude had to be absolutely ripped by the end of this.
And it took 3 days to get the scene right enough for Kubrick. Which is absolutely why I looked at Shelley Duvall and was like, girl, what are you doing? She is doing so much. And that's because you can only do so little with the amount of space that this woman has to act afraid and push herself against the wall and scream and show it all in her face. It's so much on her face. It's too much. Also because her eyes are so big, it's extra expressive. But they had to do so many takes of it, and he probably was demanding something different every time. So that's what you got to do. Ugh.
I'm also just going to throw out there a really topical comment on the housing market. It's if you needed 60 doors today, that's going to take you years to get. Yeah. If you need a door, you got to wait 6 months.
This would have been a 10-year thing if he had to do that. But like we've said before, he was known for requiring or demanding, endless takes. The scene where she actually hits him with the baseball bat, that was 127 takes. Just for that. He reaches in to turn the lock, and Wendy cuts his hand with the knife. Then they hear the snowcat, the arrival of Mr. Halloran.
And I always love Wendy's face in this scene because she hears the snowcat, and it's almost in my mind, it almost seems like she's also remembering that Danny's outside. She's like, oh my God, I need to get outside. Yeah.
So Jack basically abandons here to go tend to that. Meanwhile, Danny is back inside. He's hiding in a random side table. Mr. Halloran walks up and sees that the front door is open. He goes inside and he calls out, but there's no answer.
This is the conversation that we had. Well, no, it's not a conversation. I didn't respond. These were things that you said. Does he die? Yes. Right now? You had that whole conversation with yourself.
Well, because he was doing that sneaky sneak thing around, but he also wasn't sneaking. He was announcing himself repeatedly. And Jack had the upper hand.
I don't know if you'd mentioned this yet, but when Wendy hit Jack with the bat and he fell down the stairs, he hurt his ankle pretty bad. And as he navigates his way through the hotel right now, he's limping very bad. He's very slow. But again, it's like this like hypnotic rhythmic sound of him stepping, you know, of him like dragging his leg behind him. Mm-hmm. It's just, love it. Love it.
Jack kind of figures out where Halloran is and he hides behind a beam. And then when Halloran is close enough, he jumps out and stabs him in the gut with the axe.
I feel like stab isn't the right word, because stab just makes it sound like he's just like...
gashes him in the gut.
He like full on just horizontally swings this axe at his chest and just buries it deep. It is intense and awful.
So as we mentioned, the book did have an entirely different ending. This death of Mr. Halloran did not happen in the book. What does happen is much nicer. But Scatman Crothers said in 2017, "I liked the film, I just wish they had kept the original ending." He added that in the screenplay, he was set to survive. So in whatever Kubrick had written, the Halloran character was going to live. And in fact, when Jack Nicholson introduced Scatman to like his friends on set, he was like, "My man, this is the hero of the movie right here." So he said, quote, "I just don't understand what happened. Kubrick shot things all kinds of ways, but he never shot a version of the ending like in his script or the book. I still don't know why Stanley changed the story. I never asked him why he did it. I just wanted to do my job." The other screenwriter, Diane Johnson, confirmed in 2017 that, quote, "Kubrick really thought somebody should get killed because it was a horror movie."
And I mean, as much as like I would like to see Halloran live on like a personal level, I get it. I mean, this death is meaningful. And it sort of does, to this point, nobody's died except for, you know, people in the past. And I feel like Halloran dying here just kind of opens that door to like nobody's safe now.
Right. It does, for sure. The one thing that was coming to rescue them isn't rescuing them now. So are they fucked?
Yeah. And that's just that loss of hope is, you know, it's heavy. And I agree with that decision, personally.
And I think that's something you do want in a movie, even though I'm always rooting for the happy ending. I think that is what you want or expect in a horror movie versus what you want or expect in a book. Like in a book, you do want to feel, okay, I can close this. It's done. They're safe. It's fine. Versus in a movie, it's just different. It's different mediums. So Danny knows that this happened. He scurries out of the cupboard and he runs.
Which is smart. Jack sees him, but he is just clearly so much faster than Jack.
Yeah.
Because Jack is limping and dragging his bad ankle around.
Plus, he's a child. He has infinite power, basically.
I'm just saying, normally I'm on team stay hidden.
Oh, yeah.
But in these specific circumstances, I think Danny made the right call.
Wendy is running all around, and now we're nearing the end of the movie. So we have all of the chaos that a horror movie brings at the end of the movie. And there is just so much insanity happening with Wendy as she is just desperately trying to find Danny. She sees a person in a bear costume having sex with a guy in a room. I don't know why. Yeah. So it's worth pointing out it's a man in a bear costume or a dog costume, I think. How could you tell? Do they have a suit bottom? And only a bear head?
No, you can tell by the face.
Oh, I couldn't see a face. I just saw a bear man.
And again, that's a factor that a lot of people point to with the sexual abuse subtext, where they think that this represents Danny and Jack. I don't buy it personally.
Right.
But
Jack turns on the outside lights so that he can see Danny, who has now run outside. Wendy finds Halloran's body, and then a guy with like a slice in his head, who's clearly from the 1920s party, is like, "Great party, cheers." There's cobwebs and skeletons in the gold room, like just so much random stuff.
And again, like this is finally when it takes like a turn for the supernatural, because you know, Wendy is not going crazy that we know of. Mm-hmm. And so this is another example of the hotel finally springing to action and terrorizing these people.
Jack is following Danny's steps in the snow. By the way, Kubrick thought that the maze was too simple, supposedly, until he himself got stuck in it.
Fuck a hedge maze, okay? I want no part of a hedge maze. Absolutely not.
With Jack and Danny in the hedge maze, this scene was one of the most difficult to film because they used a mix of styrofoam and dairy salt to make the snow. And they also filmed Danny by having a camera follow while he ran, so they just repeatedly got lost in the maze.
The shots of Danny running through the maze are very reminiscent of the trike scenes. Because it's just right behind him, just showing him taking the corners, and you don't see it till he takes the corner.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
those shots kind of mirror each other.
Inside, Wendy sees the flood of blood. Is that correct?
Yeah, so she is coming around a corner. She sees the elevator doors open up, and she sees the blood come out, just like Danny's seen a couple of times.
Yeah.
To which, at this point, you compared it to Titanic.
Yeah, fully.
You're like, oh, it's just like Titanic.
I mean, Unsinkable Molly Brown. It's like, wow. It was fully Titanic. Danny gets smart, though, and he leads Jack in a circle by retracing his own steps.
Yeah, the first time they show Danny, like, retracing his steps, you couldn't tell what he was doing. And he was walking kind of funny. You're like, what the fuck is wrong with him?
I was like, what is he doing? Oh, my God.
And then you realize what he was doing. And
yeah.
It was pretty smart.
And then he hides in a bush, but he also makes sure to brush off his footsteps coming into the bush. So cute, so smart. He peeks out. There's no Jack, so he bolts. Mom comes outside. They finally meet each other. Jack is unwell. What I think is happening, he is fading fast, but he's probably concussed from the fall. He's probably malnourished. He's probably sleep deprived. So all of those three things coming together, now he's freezing. He is not able to withstand the cold.
Don't forget, completely off his rocker.
Well, yeah. Unable to even form sentences at this point. He is screaming, and it is not even remotely English.
Yeah, you're kind of following him around in circles in the maze. Like, he definitely got lost in the footsteps and has no idea where he is and is walking in circles.
Yeah. And he collapses into the bushes. Wendy and Danny escape into the snowcat, and they're free.
Yeah, as they, like, get in the snowcat and you hear it start and drive away, you were like, oh. And I think you kind of expected this, like, last minute, like, him to barely grab Danny's leg as they close the door and drive away.
No, when Jack started not being able to move, I was like, we're done here. Like, I knew it. But before that, I was like, this is not going to have a happy ending. The next shot is Jack frozen to death in the maze. So I now understand the GIF. I didn't know that was from The Shining, guys. That frozen GIF, had no idea. We go into the hotel, 1920s music is playing, and we zoom in on a series of black and white photos. One is a party shot from July 4th, 1921, with Jack front and center. What does it mean?
What does it mean? So, as Brianna said, this is different from the ending Stephen King wrote. Mm-hmm. The book ends, Dick Hallorann is alive, and Wendy and Danny move to Maine with him, where he's like running a hotel restaurant there.
Yeah.
And it's nice happy ending.
And he's like a father figure, kind of. He like teaches him to fish and stuff like that. Like, it's great.
Here we see Wendy and Danny drive away, and they presumably get away, and Jack dies. There are a few ways that people like to interpret this or look at this. One big theory is just that the hotel kind of absorbs the souls of people it traps there, like it took Jack and it made him a part of the hotel. Kubrick himself said that it's more of a reincarnation sort of thing where, the spirits of the people that work there are drawn back and then trapped by the hotel.
Yeah.
I think that tracks with, when you think about that line that Grady said in the bathroom, "Sir, you've always been the caretaker here." And again, Delbert Grady versus Charles Grady.
Right.
So Jack is almost certainly in this timeline the descendant of the old caretaker.
Reincarnation doesn't mean descendant, though.
I know, but my point is that the Gradys had the same last name. Oh. So I would infer that they were related.
Oh, okay. But you said Jack.
Well, right. So I'm saying, like, we can use what happened with Grady to kind of fill in the blanks with Jack. Since that happened with Grady, you can reason that it happened with Jack. This is just my personal theory. I'm not saying that that's, like, lore or anything. That's how I always kind of looked at it.
Well, I just read one theory from Screen Rant, so who knows. But they also talked about reincarnation. But if you think about reincarnation, it's cyclical. It's a circle of, literally the circle of life. Like, you die and then you're reincarnated as something or someone else.
I saw a nature documentary about that.
Got it,
yeah. 1995.
But it also is, representative of the cycle of violence and abuse. So, for example, This brings in the hotel location. It was built on an Indian burial ground, making it the physical representation of colonization and like the destruction that causes, the violence and destruction that causes. Some actually believe that the flooding blood represents that as well, like the death that's occurred because of colonization. But also Jack is an abuser and an alcoholic, and he falls back into that cycle. And then if you think about being the victim of that, you unintentionally may perpetuate that cycle too by always going back to it. And like you kind of said, Charles Grady did this. Now Jack is doing it. In theory, the next person will do it as well, because reincarnation just means the cycle starts all over again.
Yep. Maybe next time it'll be Lloyd.
Maybe. Well, just to kind of put a final touch on this, like we alluded to, Stephen King wasn't really thrilled with all of these changes. And I mean, I can only imagine creating a piece of art and then having someone else take it and completely be like, nah, I'm going to do my own thing, but still use your art, but kind of not really / at all. So that's strange. But he said that he specifically didn't like that Jack always seemed crazy as opposed to descending into madness, which I definitely felt it gave that off in the film. And he also wasn't happy with the casting of Shelley Duvall. It was because of the character. The character in the book is supposed to be like a blonde kind of cheerleader type person, and Shelley Duvall just simply isn't that. So he didn't like it.
Yeah. Shelley Duvall is not that.
No.
Shelley Duvall is olive oil. And that's not an insult. She literally played olive oil in Popeye with
perfect casting for
Robin
that.
Williams.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right, so let's do our scores.
10s, all 10s, baby.
10 jump scores?
No. But, I mean, obviously my horror buff scores a 10.
Yeah.
I shouldn't be allowed to call myself a horror fan if I don't give this a 10.
Yeah.
So.
What's your jump score, though?
It's complicated, right? Because, again, for the millionth time, so much of this has just been done to death that it doesn't have the same weight that it used to. Mm-hmm. But, I would give it a solid rating, like maybe 5 or 6, kind of right there in the middle, because there are a lot of visual and audio cues that make you jump. I mean, you yourself jumped and gasped like 5-6 times over the course of the movie.
God, I need to note my jumps and gasps.
Well,
I don't remember them.
So I know you said the girls themselves didn't scare you, but every time they popped up, you gasped and jumped a little bit.
Yeah.
When Jack pops out from behind the column to axe Halloran, when they intersperse those shots of the chopped up girls.
Yeah.
All these little moments, they do make you jump a little bit. So that's why I'm putting it there. None of them, really stick with you anymore, but that's not what this score is about. It's just about the jumps, and yeah.
Okay, well, I think I do judge a jump score by whether or not it hangs with me, because I gave this a 0. If I can just immediately move on from a jump scare, it wasn't a jump scare. It was jump scares need to stick with me.
So I'm not trying to mansplain horror or anything to you, but that's the literal definition of a jump scare.
I understand, but if it doesn't traumatize me, it's not significant.
But the trauma should factor more into the nightlight side of things.
I gave that a 2. What about you?
Okay. An 8. This movie had a lot of imagery that, as a kid, the two things specifically that stuck with me were the girls, not the girls just like standing in the hallway, though don't get me wrong, every time I turn a corner in a empty hotel hallway, I think of them, but specifically just the shots of them chopped up. They're very quick. You see it, but you don't really see it, but it was enough to really stick with me. And the old woman, that like the way she is just like slowly shambling forward as the skin just like falls off her in chunks is something that, I mean, I'm getting chills right now just thinking about it. So those things tend to stick with me. Yeah.
I think themes end up sticking with me more than like imagery. So maybe that's why our scores differ like that sometimes. Scaredy Cat, 2. I decided to call the Neophyte score the Neophrite score. Isn't that fun? Neophrite. I gave it an 8. Anything else you want to say about this extraordinary film?
No, I mean, if you haven't seen it, go watch it.
If you haven't seen it, go watch it. That's good. Yeah, exactly.
Just saying. It's, this is a movie that I feel like people should watch. Mm-hmm. Even if you walk away from it not loving it, totally fine. But it's an important movie in the genre.
It is.
So I just recommend it to everybody. And if you've seen it once, watch it a second time. See what you can pick up this time that you didn't pick up the first time.
I can agree with that. I won't do it, but I agree. Speaking of important films, the next movie we're going to watch is not important to the genre. It is for Easter, for Jesus. It is Stigmata.
And I'm just going to go ahead and throw out a bold prediction here that my streak of high scores will be coming to an end next week. Don't get me wrong. I love Patty Arquette. I saw Stigmata in the theater again when I was like 12.
Jesus.
I've always had kind of a soft spot, though. I will admit, I love a good horror movie that incorporates religious elements or like the occult. Like I'm all about that. So this movie it's not a great movie by any stretch, but it's a fun one. I'm looking forward to watching it again.
On brand, I am not. But thanks for listening to Go a Little Mad. Please be sure to follow or subscribe to us on your favorite pod platform and like us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, all at Go a Little Mad Pod. Visit goalittlemadpod.com to continue the conversation about each episode. And you can help us spread the word with a quick review and 5-star rating, or grab some merch from our TeePublic site. Your sharing makes all the difference.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even, Brown is going to yell at me for saying this, but, I don't care if you don't review us or buy merch or whatever.
I do.
I know you do. But tell all your friends. Tell your friends.
That
Just
too.
tell people to listen to us. That's all I want. I don't care if we don't ever sell a t-shirt. I would just really like a lot of people to listen to this because I'm so important and everyone should hear my words.
That's true.
Yeah.
Another white man's words, but
not enough of them, honestly.
I also made our merch logos and designs, okay? So I'm pretty proud of them. So at least go look at them, okay?
I know. I'm kidding. They're great. I've got a sticker. I've got 2 stickers on my stuff right now. So we've got some good stuff. My personal favorite is Delightful, Delicious, D'Onofrio.
Me too.
Yeah. So buy a sticker. Slap it everywhere.